Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll learn to become a better designer so you can dominate your competition. Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Grotzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I've got a special guest, Tanya Geisler, to talk all about imposter syndrome. You know, that voice in our heads that tells us we're not good enough, our work isn't good enough. Why would a client hire us when so-and-so's work is so much better? Stick around to learn all about the imposter complex and find out how it can help us or hold us back personally and professionally. Tanya Geisler is a leadership coach with a penchant for clarity and an abhorrence of the imposter complex. She's coached hundreds of high performers combat the imposter complex so they can step into the starring role of their lives and achieve their ultimate goals. She has written The 12 Lies of the Imposter Complex and One Truth, The Joy Pages, created Board of Your Life and the Transformational Step into Your Starring Role coaching program, is a writer, has served as a contributor and was featured in Canadian Living, and is an in-demand TEDx speaker who talks with great passion about the imposter complex, personal leadership, on all things joy, meaning, and purpose. Her clients include best-selling authors, public speakers, and rockstar world changers. It is her indomitable belief that if everyone knew their own unique recipe for their personal brand of joy, they'd hold the key to shining in their life, in their work, and in their life's work. And that really does change everything. Welcome, Tanya. I'm delighted to have you here. You're such a motivating, bright and shiny individual. Everyone should start out their day with a dose of Tanya.
Thank you, Colleen. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Sure. And I want to say, first off, congrats on being featured by the One Woman Shop in their 2018 100 Best Sites for Solopreneurs list.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was quite the honor. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're so passionate about helping others feel like a star and overcoming imposter syndrome. Where does that passion come from?
Whoa, what a great question. Like, you just go right there. Where does that passion come from? You know, I think it's like I have this ability, and I think that most people that I work with have the same ability to see what is available to people beyond what their own internal beliefs will allow them to see. Okay, so that was a really bizarre way of saying it. It's like, you know, like the kid from The Sixth Sense. Like I see dead people. I literally feel like I just see the auras around people, and I don't actually mean an aura, but I mean I can see what the universe has carved out for people, and they can't necessarily see it, you know, and I think that most of us have this ability to do it, but that gap between where somebody is and where they can be is a painful place. So, and to be able to see that and to see people limiting what they believe they're capable of is extremely painful for me to witness. So that's where it comes from. It comes from this place to it's personal. It's like it pains me, like I say, to see people not fully stepping into their starring role. Like it actually does cause me pain. So it's totally selfish. That's what it is. That's where the passion comes from.
Like, how do you define imposter syndrome, and how does it hold us back?
Okay, so I always start here with a history lesson. So it's actually called the imposter phenomenon, or that was the term coined by clinical psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes back in 1978. So they were working with high-achieving, high-functioning women at the time, and they noticed that these women seemed to be incapable of internalizing their success. Their failures, they were more than able to internalize, but any success that they had, they would chalk up to luck or fluke or any factor outside of their own talents and skills and expertise. So they would, they would assume there were all these other factors were at play. So they were discounting their own contributions. So that's really the big difference between, you know, run-of-the-mill self-doubt and imposter complexes, where there's like actually proven track record, but you're not believing it. And so you feel like it's just a matter of time before, you know, everybody finds out that you're not quite as capable as they had, you know, you'd manage to convince people that you were more capable. So that's how it shows up. So they spoke of it as the imposter phenomenon. Most people refer to it as the imposter syndrome. And even though SEO hates me for this, or my SEO hates me for it, I do call it the imposter complex, because syndrome would mean that it's a clinical diagnosis, which it actually isn't. So it's an experience, it's a phenomenon, it's a complex. And it affects, most people who are high achieving with strong values of mastery, integrity, and excellence. And I would say that that's the good news. If you're experiencing this feeling, then it means by definition that you have those strong values, and that's a good thing.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, in your bio, the term brand, I mentioned the term brand of joy. So how do you define brand of joy?
So my fundamental belief is that we are all governed by a desire to feel a certain way. And that way that I've pinned down for myself is what I would call joy. But you might call it something entirely different. That's why I say it's a brand of joy, because it's not, like for me, joy is going to look different for you. And your word might be freedom. Your word might be happiness or flow, and it'll have the same resonance. Like it'll be, this is you at your best. This is you in pursuit of this feeling and all that you do. So it's no joke to really understand what our own, I guess as Martha Beck would say, our own North Star. So for me to experience joy, I also need to understand what constitutes joy for me. So again, it's a very individual sort of like DNA kind of structure for each person. And when we know what that is, it changes everything. It changes how we write and create and relate, and and how we are, just how we go through our days. So for me to feel joy, I'm super clear that I need to feel connected, I need to feel generous, and I need to feel gratitude. So those are the three, what I call underpinning values that support joy. So when I'm out of joy, which is often, like it's hard to kind of walk around in this perpetual state, but I just do my check-in. Like, am I feeling connected? Am I feeling grateful? Am I feeling generous right now? And those are my three, those are the three access points that I get back onto my, joy superhighway. And like, let me be clear, it's not like, it's not a fluffy thing. Like my father passed away in January. And so there was profound grief there, but there was also joy, in the process of grieving it because I was able to access generosity and connection and gratitude. So even in these really hard moments, you can access your own felt sense of resonance if you know what constitutes that.
And so if we define our brand of joy or whatever that brand may be, does that mean we won't experience an imposter complex, or does it, how does that work?
No. So no, knowing your brand of joy means that and operating from that means that you are in alignment. And so it's the first place that I take people, because so I'll just use my starring role language, because I have this program and the Starring Role Academy, which is a 9-month program. We start with brand of joy because we need to make sure that the goal that we're setting is actually in alignment with our brand of joy. Because I think a lot of suffering comes from moving into and towards goals that aren't actually aligned for us personally. So this is why there's so much discontent around success, because we think it's this one thing, but unless we have it kind of locked and loaded and aligned with our own personal values, which is what brand of joy is, we're never gonna get there. So we need to understand and align our goals, our desire to step into our starring role, our desire to step into leader, our desire, business owner, whatever that thing is that is going to trigger our imposter complex. We need to make sure that that stated desire and goal is rooted in our brand of joy. And once it is, and it's locked and loaded and aligned, then you're starting from a place of integrity. If you're not starting from a place of integrity, nothing's going to work, and the imposter complex wins.
Interesting. So you said earlier that if you're a high achiever, you're more likely to experience the imposter complex. So, and you said it's kind of a good thing. So are there other ways that the imposter complex actually helps us?
Well, I mean, the first thing is just know, by virtue of the fact you're experiencing it, by virtue of the fact that you're like listening to one of the lies of the imposter complex, or you're feeling, shut down because of the imposter complex, and you're in the question if you're a fraud, I need you to know that actual frauds don't feel like frauds. Okay? Actual imposters don't feel like imposters. So that's the good news. Like, that you're experiencing it means that you're not. So that's really, really helpful. But it's still, even as we know that, we go, oh yes, that makes a lot of sense. It still does keep us out of action. It has 3 very specific things that it's trying to do. It's going to try to keep you out of action. It's going to have you doubt your capacity, and it's going to want you to feel alone and isolated, or that like that. So that's what it's really kind of moving towards. The good news, other than the fact that if you're experiencing it, it means you're high functioning, high achieving, strong values of mastery, integrity, and excellence, is also that this desire for mastery and excellence, this does keep you on your edge. It does keep you on your game. And then the other thing is you don't experience the imposter complex in all areas of your life. I mean, you'd literally never get out of bed if that were true. But you do experience it in the places that are at your edge. So, for instance, I talk about this all the time. I have a yoga practice, and I'm decent. I have zero need to be an expert in my yoga practice. So I'm never going to experience the imposter complex there. In my parenting, in my speaking, in my coaching, in my writing, you better believe it shows up, because it's there to show up to remind me how much this matters. So when it shows up, you can rest assured that it's here because this is something that is deeply important to you. And when you go there, you go, oh, right, it is actually aligned with my brand of joy, and this is worth fighting through.
When we have these negative thoughts and these self-doubting thoughts, it really can affect, I think, how we talk to clients, talk to others, friends, family. And I think it can sometimes, affect how they perceive us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or don't talk to them, right? Because if it's trying to keep you out of action, like, that's usually, I'll say that there are, I've mentioned that there are 12 lies, and I'm sure you'll be linking to that. But it is going to show up in mostly the I'm not ready yet. And I'm not ready yet to have that sales conversation. I'm not ready yet to take on that kind of project, so I'm not going to. It absolutely shows up in these conversations, and it makes it hard for us to, sell ourselves, because we were not sold on ourselves, right? That's really what's happening here. We aren't sold on our own selves.
Right.
And there are a couple of different coping mechanisms that we go to try to avoid feeling like the imposter. And those are procrastination and perfectionism and people pleasing and leaky boundaries and comparison and diminishment. And diminishment is the one that shows up. Well, they all show up. Again, not all at the same time, thank goodness, but really often in those sales conversations. That's really the one where or sales conversations or pitching ourselves or whatever that is. That's really where diminishment really likes to show up and keeps us from, making the ask and making the sale.
Yeah. And I've experienced that myself. I mean, I think sometimes, especially as a creative person, like, I think creatives might actually be more prone to this in a way, but we start doubting ourselves if a client questions us about our work. It doesn't even have to be, it could just be a question. And, I know I've sometimes taken it the wrong way. It's just a question. I can push back. I can assert myself. But, when I was just starting out, it was kind of like, oh, they're questioning it. My work must not be as good as I thought, or maybe if they're not responsive, then you start wondering, oh, is it something I said or did? Maybe they haven't gotten back to me because they don't like my work. And so we go into these scenarios in our head.
Yeah.
Making up all kinds of ridiculous situations that aren't even like reality. At least that's what I've done.
Well, you just spoke to line number 3 of the imposter complex, and that's that it's all, you're either a complete success or a raging failure. It's all or nothing. So it's got this really sort of binary kind of thinking. So it's like, it's this or it's that, and there's nothing in between. So you don't hear back from a client, therefore they hate me, they hate my work. It's like super calamitous. And really it's like, no, they were on vacation, or you forgot to press send on it. It's still sitting in your outbox, right? Like we really like to, catastrophize this. That's the all or nothing competence extremities. John Lennon says, part of me thinks that I'm a complete loser, and the other part of me thinks I'm God Almighty. And Tina Fey talks about this too, about like, you're either like this huge waves that you ride. So one of the things I just have people do, actually in all of the imposter complex work, is really come back to 3 very specific set points. And that's around, like, it wants to keep you out of action, then your job is to get into and under those beliefs that are holding you back, those beliefs that are telling you that your client hates your work, therefore they hate you, right? So you got to like really challenge that. Like, really? Is that what's actually going on? And then the other thing is, if it wants you to doubt your capacity, your job is also to remind yourself all of the times that you have knocked it out of the park, or all of the times you've been here before in this crisis of confidence, and what you did next, right? So just come back to, I call this bolster your authority thesis. Like, come back to all that you do know and all that you've done and the good work that went into what you're doing. And then the third, where it tries to keep you alone and isolated, reach out to your mastermind group. If you don't have a mastermind group, get a mastermind group. Like, make sure that you are surrounded by people who can help continue to hold, how the impeccable work that you are doing, so that they continue to remind you. So those are always the 3 things. And I'll probably say those a couple more times throughout this, because that's really what needs to happen. We need to meet the critics, we need to bolster our authority thesis, and we need to get social and assemble our cast.
Yeah, that's great about the mastermind group. I actually have a small group of colleagues that I talk to on a video call every Friday for an hour. And it's been like life-changing and business-changing. It's like such a relief to know that others are going through the same crappy situations with clients that you might be, or, having some of the same business struggles, and, then it's not you and you don't take it as personally. It's like, oh, it's not just happening to me, and then they also are the ones to remind you of your wins.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because we love to discount those wins, because the ego wants to want more than it wants to get. It wants us to be moving on to the next thing. So yeah, it's vitally important, particularly, if you have a group like that, then make sure that they know that that's one of your tells. Like, hey, folks, I'm going to need help celebrating, because that's something I'm really lousy at. So please celebrate with me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, I think I might have seen this in a tweet of yours, but there's a saying that if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. But why wouldn't we want to be the smartest person in the room?
Well, then we're not at our edge, right? We're not at our edge. And this is, that's what evolution is to constantly be pushing ourselves to step into that U-shaped space that the universe has for you. So yeah, just like absolutely continuing to grow at our own edges. And that's where the imposter complex is going to show up. So I actually do think that, back to your question, does it ever serve a purpose? I feel like sometimes if you're not experiencing the imposter complex, then you might not be growing your edges in the way that you really could be growing your edges, which is, we're here for a good time, not a long time, or something like that. So, I think that's, if you're the smartest person in the room, then, go to a new room where you're going to challenge yourself. And, I also think too, I actually didn't use that quote, but I know it, and I totally get it. I think that one of the things too is, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're not challenging yourself. You're not doing a deeper analysis of all that you know. So I'll use myself as an example. I'm super comfortable talking about the imposter complex all day, every day, and I love it. Like, I love it, love it, love it, love it. But at this point, I feel like I understand as much as I possibly can about it from my perspective, right? As a white, able-bodied, cisgendered, woman from the Western world, I understand this as well as almost anybody possibly can. So now I'm required to grow my own edges and to try to understand how people of different perspectives experience the imposter complex. Like, when is it the imposter complex, and when is it actually like a microaggression or harassment that's being dealt with? So I need to understand how somebody experiences the imposter complex who doesn't look like me and who has a very different lived experience and who's been marginalized and oppressed in ways that I haven't been. So this is a total edge for me. It feels very risky, and it's exactly where I need to go, because I'm the smartest person in the room when it comes to the imposter complex from this perspective that I'm standing in. So my job, if I'm to be in integrity with my work and my body of work and the people that I'm here to help, I want to make sure that I have as much content and context that I'm going to be the most helpful to people as possible. And I might not be the right coach for everybody, but I'll certainly, connect people with the right resources.
And this might be along the same lines, but on your website, you say something really interesting. You say, I'm a leadership coach, which is great because you're a leader. But, we don't necessarily feel like leaders, so how did you come up with that?
Well, it was just the through line I kept seeing of it. Pretty much every single person that I come into contact with, or that is, let me just say this, if they're on my website, then they're seeking something that's already inside of them. Right. So, and that's just kind of how that works. Like, if you're looking for something, not everybody is coming to my site. Trust me. Again, SEO knows, but people that are looking for, they're wanting more visibility. They're wanting to overcome their diminishment. They're wanting to step into unshakable confidence. Right. So that means that they're like, so I can already surmise if somebody's on my site, I know that there's a leader within them that is just busting to get out and needs some tools and needs some of what I got. So I'm pretty confident in that. And it was just, I've been doing this for 10 years and I know that. I know who the people are that are paying attention to my work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you helped me about a year and a half ago to have a total aha moment. And it was amazing because you started with a simple question about my title, and I was calling myself graphic designer. And that was in my email signature. That was on my website. That's what I was telling everybody that I did. But I'm also a business owner, and I have been for 15 years. And, that's what I would tell people. Like, I'm a graphic designer. And you were like, well, why are you calling yourself just a graphic designer? And when I explained all that I actually was doing, you were like, you're really more of a creative director. And with 20 some years of experience, you're not just a graphic designer. And I really, that really woke me up because, I changed my title after that. And I changed it to like visual brand expert and creative director, and something that really reflected better what I was doing. And I think also it not only changes people's perception of what you do, but like it adds value and really reflects it better. But the vital lesson that you helped me discover was that I had a lot of self-limiting beliefs and this I'm not good enough mentality in the back of my mind all the time that I didn't really realize was affecting my business, right? And that was a result of a lot of criticism that I had, growing up, and then bullying I experienced in school growing up, and never really feeling that I was the star of my own show, no matter how much I achieved. Mm-hmm. So after you helped me discover that, a lot in my life and in my business actually changed. And, I cut off a lot of toxic personal and business relationships. I fired some clients that were just not, they were, it was just horrendous to work with them. And I didn't want to put up with that anymore. So yeah, I was even afraid of being on a video call the day I talked to you. That was the first day I'd ever been on a video call. And now I've got a podcast. So it's like I've been breaking out, of my comfort zone quite a bit since then. So I huge thanks. Hats off to you, because that really changed a lot.
I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you for letting me know. That makes me so happy. I remember it like it was yesterday. I really, really do.
Yeah.
You just, and so very, very much. And it was even just in your language, like just a graphic designer. And the thing is, the moment you said yes to, the U-shaped space that the universe had carved out for you, because that's what I do, then your business went, Finally. And it kind of unfolded itself and made things, I'm not going to say that they probably got a lot easier, but they certainly got clearer. Is this worthy of my time as this expert? Is this worthy? Is that relationship worthy? Right. So the moment you step up to meet yourself, then boy, oh boy, your life sure steps up to meet you too.
Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So it totally changed my personal and business life for the better. So if others, like if any of the listeners, if they're having any trouble breaking through imposter complex and any of these issues, how can you help them?
Well, the first thing I would have them do is I would go on my site. There's a quiz that will help you to decide which of the behavioral traits, the coping mechanisms of the imposter complex might be holding you back. So again, those are procrastination, perfectionism, diminishment, comparison, people pleasing, and leaky boundaries. And each one of these tells a story about where we need to bolster certain aspects of our life. So, like for instance, if you are stuck in diminishment or comparison, that's going to tell me that you're having a crisis of presence. So you're not really rooting into presence. And there are these three aspects of unshakable confidence, by the way. Unshakable confidence, is the opposite feeling of the imposter complex. Okay. So it's like super solid, not at all wobbly. So I talk about unshakable confidence as being this three-legged stool without all legs in place, things become wobbly. So if you're in diminishment or comparison, that points me to you being in a crisis of presence. Procrastination, perfectionism, if that's the behavior that you're wrestling with, then you might be in a crisis of action. And if you're, people pleasing and leaky boundaries, then you might be having a crisis of integrity. So knowing which one that you're in will help us to discern what needs to happen. And again, just remembering that the imposter complex job is to keep you out of action, doubting your capacity, and having you feel alone and isolated. So without even knowing what those behavioral traits are, you really need to get clear about what's in the way. Like, why am I stopped here? I know it's trying to keep me out of action, but why am I stopped? What are the beliefs that I'm believing about myself right now, or my capacity, or whatever it is? And then you need to go, okay, well, here's all the other times that I have felt this way. Here are all the times that I was uncertain and I did it anyway, and I discovered that the party was on the other side of the resistance. And then the third, again, is to make sure that you are surrounded, that you have people that you can talk to, that you have, that you've got people around you. And so that's another place. Like, that's how I help people. I'm a coach. So I'm that person that people can come to and make sure that they don't feel alone in this. Or, I've got a community, like I say, the 9-month Starring Role Academy. That's another place where this is the work that we do. But for starters, if you do that quiz, you're going to discern which of those behaviors is in the way. And then there's like pretty specific action items that you can take to really kind of root back into whether it's presence or integrity or action.
Fantastic. Now, don't you have a book coming out too?
Yes, I am working on a book. It's actually taken a tiny bit of a detour because of this, because of the shift in direction. So it's taken a tiny bit of a detour, but the work, it's it's almost overbaked at this point. But I do want to have those other perspectives that are coming in that are going to be, that's part of the research that I'm doing right now. But yes, it is coming. So I will let you know when that's available for sure.
Yes. All right, great. Well, thanks so much, Tanya. I appreciate you coming onto the podcast. I think this will be really helpful.
Yay. That makes me so happy. That's what I'm here for. Thank you for having me.
If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Go to creative-boost.com where you can sign up to get notified of new episodes and posts, share on social media, or leave a comment. Thanks so much for listening.